We're finishing up Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics, Book 2, with sections 8 and 9. This is section 8. There are 3 kinds of disposition, then, 2 of them vices, involving excess and deficiency respectively, and 1 a virtue, that is to say, the mean, and all are in a sense opposed to all. For the extreme states are contrary both to the intermediate state and to each other, and the intermediate to the extremes. As the equal is greater relatively to the less relatively to the greater, so the middle states are excessive relatively to the deficiencies, deficient relatively to the excesses, both in passions and in actions. For the brave man appears rash relatively to the coward, and cowardly relatively to the rash man. And similarly, the temperate man appears self-indulgent relatively to the insensible man, insensible relatively to the self-indulgent, and the liberal man prodigal relatively to the mean man, mean relatively to the prodigal. Hence also the people at the extremes push the intermediate man over each to the other, and the brave man is called rash by the coward, cowardly by the rash man, and correspondingly in the other cases. These states being thus opposed to one another, the greatest contrariety is that of the extremes to each other, rather than to the intermediate. For these are further from each other than from the intermediate, as the great is further from the small, and the small from the great, than both are from the equal. Again, to the intermediate, some extremes show a certain likeness, as that of rashness to courage, and that of prodigality to liberality. But the extremes show the greatest unlikeness to each other. Now, contraries are defined as the things that are furthest from each other, so that things that are further apart are more contrary. To the mean, in some cases, the deficiency, in some the excess is more opposed. For example, it is not rashness, which is an excess, but cowardice, which is a deficiency, that is more opposed to courage, and not insensibility, which is a deficiency, but self-indulgence, which is an excess, that is more opposed to temperance. This happens from 2 reasons, one being drawn from the thing itself, for because one extreme is near and liker to the intermediate, we oppose not this, but rather its contrary to the intermediate. For example, since rashness is thought liker and nearer to courage, and cowardice more unlike, we oppose rather the latter to courage. For things that are further from the intermediate are thought more contrary to it. This, then, is one cause, drawn from the thing itself. Another is drawn from ourselves, for the things to which we ourselves more naturally tend seem more contrary to the intermediate. For example, we ourselves tend more naturally to pleasures, and hence are more easily carried away towards self-indulgence than towards propriety. We describe as contrary to the mean, then, rather the directions in which we more often go to great lengths. Therefore, self-indulgence, which is an excess, is the more contrary to temperance. Section 9. That moral virtue is a mean, then, and in what sense it is so, and that it is a mean between 2 vices, the one involving excess, the other deficiency, and that it is such because its character is to aim at what is intermediate in passions and in actions, has been sufficiently stated. Hence also it is no easy task to be good, for in everything it is no easy task to find the middle. For example, to find the middle of a circle is not for everyone, but for him who knows. So too, anyone can get angry. That is easy. or give or spend money. But to do this to the right person, to the right extent, at the right time, with the right motive, and in the right way, that is not for everyone. Nor is it easy. Wherefore goodness is both rare and laudable and noble. Hence, he who aims at the intermediate must first depart from what is the more contrary to it. As Calypso advises, hold the ship out beyond that surf and spray. For of the extremes, one is more erroneous, one less so. Therefore, since to hit the mean is hard in the extreme, we must, as a second best, as people say, take the least of the evils. And this will be done best in the way we describe. But we must consider the things towards which we ourselves also are easily carried away. For some of us tend to one thing, some to another, and this will be recognized from the pleasure and the pain we feel. We must drag ourselves away to the contrary extreme, for we shall get into the intermediate state by drawing well away from error, as people do in straightening sticks that are bent. Now, in everything, the pleasant or pleasure is most to be guarded against, for we do not judge it impartially. We ought then to feel towards pleasure as the elders of the people felt towards Helen, and in all circumstances repeat their saying. For if we dismiss pleasure thus, we are less likely to go astray. It is by doing this then, to sum up the matter, that we shall best be able to hit the mean. But this is no doubt difficult, and especially in individual cases, for it is not easy to determine how both how and with whom, and on what provocation, and how long one should be angry. For we too sometimes praise those who fall short, and call them good-tempered. But sometimes we praise those who get angry, and call them manly. The man, however, who deviates little from goodness is not blamed, whether he do so in the direction of the more or of the less, but only the man who deviates more widely. For he does not fail to be noticed. But up to what point and to what extent a man must deviate before he becomes blameworthy, it is not easy to determine by reasoning, any more than anything else that is perceived by the senses. Such things depend on particular facts, and the decision rests with perception. So much then is plain that the intermediate state is in all things to be praised, but that we must incline sometimes towards the excess, sometimes towards the deficiency, for so shall we most easily hit the mean and what is right.